This is Steve Halleck again with TikToking.com. You can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram. I'm also on Snapchat, although I can't figure out how to use it. I'm at Steve Halleck on there as well. And today I have maybe the most important watch of the last couple decades. This is Harry Winston's Opus V. So let's get into it. So Opus V is the last Opus watch that Max Bucer made while he was at Harry Winston before starting MB&F. And this one was done with Felix Baumgartner of URWERK. And again, I think it's possibly the most significant piece of the last 20 years, and I'll tell you why. But first, let's go into the watch itself. So, as is typical of URWERK's, the time-telling mechanism is really the star of the show here, and it's their sort of usual kind of sundial approach where an indicator sweeps across a dial of minutes and the hours somehow change. But this one adds a retrograde function to it all. So the crown is hidden under here. And by the way, this particular model is platinum, and it's unbelievably heavy. Like, you can see the size of this chunk of platinum. The watch is like a brick and super solid, but you can feel here there's a nice little click, and this opens, and that's how you wind it. But let's look at the retrograde here. So you can see these cubes turn. You can see the 12 becoming a 3 right there. And at 60, this hand retrogrades down. Now, the hardest part of the development of this movement apparently was the tiny little spring that is responsible for the retrograde, and they totally nailed it. The coolest thing about this is the actual spring itself. You can see it bounces when it gets to the bottom, and it's just like one of the most solid and satisfying pieces of mechanical movement that you'll ever see in a watch. It's just fantastic how it all works, and there's almost like a tactileness to this spring back of the hand there. It's really pretty spectacular. But other than that, it's a pretty simple watch. It's really cool. It has a 5-day power reserve, which I find to be one of the most useful things that a watch can have, especially a manual wind watch, and especially a watch that you're probably not going to wear every day, because you can keep it wound, you wear it, you put it in your safe for a few days, you pull it out again, and it's still on the right time, which is really nice. Here you have a day-night indicator, which is really cool, mainly in that it provides nice color to the dial. This blue is really beautiful, and the rest of it is this kind of gray color, so it really makes it pop. And on the back, you have what's standard of URWERK is this micro adjuster, so you can adjust it a little bit faster or a little bit slower if the rate changes. And this is actually a service indicator, so this dial shows you 5 years of use. If you have it wound for 5 years, it'll go all the way to there, and it means that you have to send it in for service. This one had a factory service, so that was reset down to 0, and then it hasn't really been worn since, so it's still there at 0. But that's pretty cool. If you buy like a used one or something like that, you know if it's been serviced and how much it's been worn, and you can keep track of your own watch on sort of a long scale, kind of how much have I worn this? The buckle is platinum, and the strap is nice, but just normal croc strap. I'll show it to you on the wrist, and then I'll talk a little bit about why I think it's so significant. Let me try to buckle this. Again, it's so heavy, I get worried when I buckle it, especially when I'm paying attention to a video, that it's gonna just fall off my wrist. Okay. So once it's on the wrist, it's pretty wearable other than the heft. I have just shy of a 7-inch, maybe sometimes 6 3/4, depending on the weather and how much cake I've been eating. And you can see it fits totally fine on the wrist. It's definitely not a small watch, but it's not super long, so it can fit on almost any wrist, and it would look big but not too big on almost any wrist. But again, it's really, really heavy, so you have to be prepared for that. Now, what I think is so amazing about this watch, first of all, it was extremely pivotal in the mainstream adoption of URWERK as a brand and as a jumping off point for Max for his creation of MB&F. So it was really a piece that launched two of the most important contemporary horology brands. And in addition to that, if you just look at what came before it and what came after it, I think you'll see it's a real delineation point in the history of contemporary horology. So if you look before, even at the crazier watches, you have like Vianney's Antigua, you have Vianney's Opus 3, you have URWERK's 102 and 103. But this is really one of the first times that you have this much depth in a watch, and that the watch became a kind of real three-dimensional machine where you had this crystal and then underneath is a whole little three-dimensional city of stuff going on. And now you kind of see that all the time. It's the hallmark of Grubel Force. It's prevalent in most super watches, but I think you'll see if you were to line up all of the really significant watches in contemporary horology that this was really the point where that became the norm. And before this, you have maybe some crazy watches, but they're much more flat and they're still more geared towards being a watch than being a machine. And this watch really is a machine first and a watch second. And that combined with the fact that it is so important in the history of both MB&F and URWERK, I think it's really going to be held up as one of the most important watches of this entire generation into the future. So here you have it. It's the Opus V from Harry Winston in platinum. I hope you enjoyed the review and the watch and got a little bit of history lesson. If you like this one, check out some of the others. I'm sure you'll like the HM4 and the Opus 7 and a couple others, but I don't really know that it gets any better than this from a real collector's watch historian point of view. This is maybe the ultimate modern watch. So I will see you next time.